Hi everyone, this is Devleena, welcoming you all to another iconic episode of Iconic Ads with Devleena and Saurabh. And with me, I have my expert co host, Saurabh Bajaj. Hi Saurabh,
Hi, great to be here again.
welcome to IBB once again. And I am happy to announce our guest for today, Ms. Suman Verma, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Humdard Laboratories. Hi Suman.
Hi,
Hi.
Suman.
Hi.
And Suman, we are excited to talk about another iconic campaign from you. And before we get into the conversation,
जमीन के अंदर जमीन के बाहर सोना उगलेगा रेत का समंदर राजस्थान है तैयार राजस्थान है तैयार
राजा महाराजाओं की धरती पर खड़ी गगनचुंबी इमारतें, कोख में दहकता खजाना, बाहर तरक्की की इबारतें।
उड़ जा तिले बादलों का एवरेस्ट नील गगन के रेगिस्तान में सूरज की छांव में बना ले अब नया घर जमीन के अंदर जमीन के बाहर सोना उगलेगा रेत का समंदर राजस्थान है तैयार राजस्थान है तैयार
and before we get into the conversation, we would love to know about your involvement with the campaign and your association with this particular campaign.
Okay. So this is a very interesting campaign for me because this was in 2015 when I had just taken charge of running the Delhi office of rediffusion. And when I had walked in, I was told that there were a couple of pitches which were already done. And there was something in this government space that had happened. And we were a part of a consortium that was going together to go for this business. Now, in a consortium, there was a PR agency, there was us, there was an activation agency. You know how it is. You bring in different strengths, and that's how it was. Now, that one final day came because the first level of pitching in government is that you put in your quotations of how much you're going to charge. And obviously, the fee that we had was marginally small fee that we were working on. And like I said, that when your fees are small, you have to pitch to get the best work out. Because when you start getting big fees, you also have clients who are dominating and telling you what is to be done. So a lot of times creativity can take a back seat. So this is how it was. And on one fine day, we were invited to make a presentation to the chief minister, who was Mrs. Vasundhara Raje those days. And I had done a government campaign in the past, so I knew that when you walk in, it's a room, it's a boardroom that we've never seen before. But this one really took me by surprise. So there were at least 50 to 60 IS officers who were sitting. Then there was chief minister. Then there were more people. There were more people. Then there were more people. So this time you really had to be an orator of sorts to present. And for us, the big fight that was happening, and this is, I'm just telling you as an aside because it's an interesting starting point. We had E&Y as the knowledge partner. We had Edelman as the PR, and the people who had really pitched for the business and got this entire thing out. There was me, and that is Rediffusion, the creative partners. We had, I think, Encompass, who was going to do the activation. And for whatever reason, each one, bless you, and each one was trying to control the other partner by not wanting them to speak much. Now, the subject on which I had to present was state branding. Rajasthan was state branding, right? And when you look at state branding, and Rajasthan Summit was all about getting investments from foreign and other local players to promote Rajasthan. Now, given only 5 slides, and I had to talk. But motor mouths that I am, and I said, how will I stop in 5 slides? So I'm going to still say what I have to do. So there I was, right in front of this big, large audience, and I thought, let me just be myself and present. So I presented, and obviously we had, Gujarat had Amitabh Bachchan as the brand ambassador, and some place had somebody else, and we had nobody, and we had to make a presentation. So I just managed to do, I think, a decent job. And when that thing got over, there was this lunch happening, and suddenly somebody comes and tells me, you're being called on that table. And I said, who is it? So I see it was Mrs. Vasundhara Raji on that table. And she said, come join us, and your presentation was very good. So, for me, that is a very big thing because, Mrs. Raji is not just a minister. She's a woman of the world. She's got fine taste, just very eloquent, and and also she had very clear do's and don'ts in her mind. So it is important sometimes when you are in that close proximity to get an idea of what her expectations are from us. So from that little chat that I had with her on that table, I knew that she knew what she was going to look for. And it wasn't something that we could just go and deliver and come back, because she wasn't going to take that for sure. So, this is where the whole journey for us began.
Nice. Some of the key takeouts of what I take out from the piece of creative, right? One is like you said, Rajasthan hai tayar, right? So I think oftentimes decoding, there is a brief to say that we want to publicize our state and so on and so forth. But what is that one thing we are trying to say? Often that's the most difficult thing to arrive at. So I think that was something which is quite interesting for me. So maybe you can just talk a little bit more about that journey, right? Where did you move from the brief is to publicize Rajasthan to the whole penny dropping to say that what we want to talk about is that Rajasthan is ready?
Yes, I think the brief that was given to every single party member, right? Whether it was PR, it was creative, whether it was the activation, the brief was very simple, that we have to get a lot of investments in, right? And we were looking at foreign investments as well. So because we would do a lot of road shows, which is what any state does to promote their state. How ready was Rajasthan for business? In the sense that we all know that there is a Japanese Korean kind of law here that we were aware of, but if you're asking people to come from other countries to come and invest in Rajasthan, what image did they have in their head? Other than tourism, what did you know that Rajasthan could do? So that itself was a challenge. So how would a state get promoted? So for us, it was a very simple thing to say that, if you're saying that Rajasthan is ready to take on all these investments, that we can do, we have this many megawatts and this many volumes of solar panels we can develop, and we can set up things like this. I thought my takeout from that whole brief was that perhaps Rajasthan is ready. Perhaps it is in a state of preparedness that others are not aware of. And that is the story that we need to actually communicate, because in a normal circumstances you will not read so much about Rajasthan in this much detail. I mean, the very fact that the states are connected, the highways are so good, that itself is a story. So while what you see in our creatives are very small, but the other support, the surroundings that we did, whether it was books and brochures and leaflets and other forms of communication that went out, I think these things became a very important point. These were nuggets of truth that any investor would want to know.
The other thing which I'm curious about is the line of Resurgent Rajasthan. So Resurgent Rajasthan, if you can tell us a little bit more as to where did that come out about, and what was really the key message that they were trying to tell out there.
So Resurgent Rajasthan was a branding that they already had. We didn't have to do this. Okay, the very fact that Rajasthan was emerging from being a non-industrialized area, the very fact that it was the land of the rising sun in that sense of the term, I think this branding had come from that thought.
And I think you're right. I think the most impactful part of the creative is really the users are celebrating,
Yes,
right? And it's always the area of debate as to is it something that we're just bringing in for star power or is something that we're bringing in for a good brand connect, right? In this case, it does give a very nice and feel. It does seem very seamless. But can you tell us a little bit more about how Irfan really fits into the brand narrative and takes that
right,
forward?
right. I think the research that we had done, we were looking for a person who was really from that state, right? So while I'm sure there were many, Irfan seemed like a more credible face because Irfan was not just an actor par excellence. We were also looking at his credibility and stature that he had acquired both nationally and internationally. And when you look at him, there is a sense of, I don't know what, I can't say a sense of belonging for that state. He just has that whole thing of, like it's payback time for me. When you look at him, especially, when you know that he's from Rajasthan, he's from Tonk, and I don't know, intuitively we felt this is the guy, and we were not going to use him just for glamour because like I said, my creative partner and I were like quite mad. We were like thinking of doing many more things, and we said that it'll be fun to get him there. And also when that script, where there is a narrative where he speaks actually in the middle of that anthem. This guy, Pranav, when he was writing it, he says, I know that the singer is not going to read this out. This bit has to be done by Irfan, and there is a certain amount of gravitas. And we were also looking at an actor who had that element of gravitas that Irfan Khan had.
Nice. And any stories from the set, anything about the production? There's a lot of CG work which is there inside the film. So anything
Yes.
about that? Was it
So, I tell you
painstaking?
what, so let me tell you about Irfan while we're at it. So, I think the ministry approached him and he didn't take much time and he agreed. Because for him also, there was a great sense of pride that while he's an actor and he does so much, but when it's like somebody telling me, would you want to go back to Calcutta and promote Calcutta? I promote Calcutta sitting in Delhi today, right? So, there was that. I think everybody has that little thing
Yes,
about
right.
the city that they've grown up in. So I remember that when we were shooting in Jaipur, and in that vanity van, Irfan Khan told us that, it just feels a bit strange that it doesn't feel strange that I'm an actor, but it feels strange that I'm sitting here on this street in this time of the day. And he told us that, I would go in my cycle for my tuitions. I would go and give tuitions and I would do this bit. And I lived in Tonk. He told us about his family house and all of that. He had so much of sense of pride in wanting to be associated with this initiative that we were doing for Rajasthan. I think it was incredible and it showed, it showed on his face while he can be, funny also, but the point is that pride is something that you couldn't hide from his face. So that was
Nice.
incredible that when he came onto this project he was completely gung-ho and he just gave his more than 100%, which I'm sure he does for any of the brands that he works on or worked on.
Nice. One of the questions I've been meaning to ask you is, I would define your archetype type as a rebel. I don't know whether you agree or not.
I
But,
agree with you. I agree with you.
but
Otherwise also.
but somehow, see, not all rebels are able to evoke that degree of trust because most of the stories that we hear from you are always about how the client on the other side would have approved or betted on something that they wouldn't have done for any other creative person. So, what do you think it is about you that is able to get that to happen?
No, but well, I can tell you one thing. Rebel also means that you have equal number of people hating you and an equal number of people liking you for being a bit gutsy, right? Like I always believe that. So I make enemies quite easily, but my whole thing is that you can hate me as much as you wish to, because my stop is not forever with you, right? But at some stage of your life, you will, in a pulled back state, know that this is something that did you good as well. Because what would Resurgent Rajasthan mean to me other than an experience and a piece of work that was done? But to those who still run Resurgent Rajasthan, these are benchmarks. Because I remember that I think, I mean, let me just answer this. I feel that I'm a bit of a rebel because I always feel that if I am in the business of earning money for my company, then I will have to toe the line at some stage, but not without not airing my views. But if I'm not even earning money for myself, then I have to earn reputation for myself. So let's be very clear right from the start. So, the career partner with whom you work, that degree of rebelliousness also gets compounded when the other person is equally mad. So in my case, Pranav and I have worked together quite a bit, and he's also a rebel, and in that sense that he can work for no money. You can tell him that you have to work all night, and you have to deliver something to me at 6 in the morning. It will be in your inbox. I want to do this. He will add value to what you want to do. So it sort of complements that madness, that zaniness with which you're going. And we were very clear by the time we had done 2 films. We had presented the script, and the way we narrated the script to Mrs. Raji, and she would say, "Go ahead, make it." I gathered enough courage one day and I told her, I said, "Ma'am, this will be one campaign that should win us all awards that we're looking at." And as an agency person, if you're not even hungry for awards, then what are you here for? Felt like telling her, "Sorry, we are making no money in this, but might as well be known for what we've done." So this is how it was. So my rebelliousness always came like that. That if I'm not earning money, then I want that person to help us deliver good
I
works.
believe that the finest marketing work always happens when the client and
Yes.
the creative person are able to drink together. And believe you me, even in today's world, it's so difficult to make that to happen. There are layers within layers, and it is really frustrating. And and those layers can be on the client side and they can be at the agency side. At the both
True.
places, the creator and the person who's given the brief are separated with such a large distance, and it is so
Yes.
stupid because that's where the best possible work gets diluted.
But I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I don't want to mention any names, but because of being in an agency for such a long time, I have spent more than 27 years in ad agency. I never found people when they were briefing us uh, something they said which was what we didn't know. It's always what you don't know is that thing that creates that intrigue. If you tell me that a camel pencil is a camel pencil, when you sharpen it, it's going to be pointed and it's going to be nice, well, it's just a pencil then, right? But even if you said that when you sharpen it and the rings that will come out will always come in circular thing, it triggers off a different spark in your head, right? So I always felt that people who can brief you differently, you will always get work which is different.
Only one thing, Suman, what was the, after effect, like the impact of the.
So, yeah, I think in all of this, the impact was to be judged by the number of MOUs that got signed, right? Now, that is something, whatever got published is what we would know, right? So, there were huge numbers of MOUs that got signed and stuff like that. But then at a state level, these are things that are kept to themselves. They just announce and say that it's been a very successful summit and 100,000 or 10,000 worth of business would have come, but then who's to know that? So that is something.
So we had such an interesting conversation today and nice stories and lot to talk about. So now I'm curious to know what are the 3 takeaways and learnings from this particular conversation, Saurav.
Cool. No, I think we have been able to cover a very new sector, right? We always hear these lovely campaigns about states, but we don't know what goes behind it. Yeah. So I think the first learning for me is that, especially when it comes to working on a state government or a government agency, often the brief may not be very structured. And oftentimes you have to think on the fly, right? So I think in this case, what we learned as a demonstration was, how they were able to get to the nugget of the idea, the core idea. And the core idea is the fact that Rajasthan is ready, and hence everything else fell behind it, right? So decoding your brief, linking it to strategy, I think is the first part for any creative partner to unlock. Yeah. The second is in a zone which is like a state government. You have different strengths and weaknesses. You may not have glamorous budgets, but then you might have the power to bring in celebrities in different ways, right? And I think how the agency was able to unlock in Irfan through the strength of their ecosystem was pretty interesting for me. Yeah. The third thing, which is quite fundamentally interesting for me, is whether it is government or investors, right? The role that aesthetics play, by getting the right celebrity, the right co-partners, the nuances of the creativity. I think that is really, really important, right? And hence, even when you have something like a state government, being able to inspire trust is really important. Yeah. So just to summarize, one, you have to unlock the brief. Unlocking the brief, coming up with the core idea is typically the most important thing. Leverage the power of your ecosystem to bring in different engaging elements, and finally, of aesthetics to ensure that whatever piece of creativity that you create is really impactful. I think for me, these are the top 3 takeaways for this conversation.
Superb, Saurabh. A different conversation, and the takeaways are also very different from our usual conversations, right? So I think these are on point, and thank you for bringing them for us, and thank you for sharing. So I'm sure
Looking forward to next week.
a lot of people. Yes, Saurabh, looking forward for it, and thank you to our viewers and listeners for patiently listening to us. Yeah, we will see you.
All right. Bye-bye.